The crystal spires of Velendra were dying, their bioluminescent cores flickering like candles in a hurricane, as harvester plasma cannons systematically murdered a city that had grown for 3,000 years. Lieutenant Commander Elena Vasquez pressed herself against a fractured crystal wall, feeling the structure's pain resonate through her bones as another artillery barrage shattered nearby towers into glittering rain. "Bravo team, report status," she called into her comm, earning nothing but static mixed with the screaming harmonics that crystal architecture made when it was being destroyed. The retreat through Velendra had turned into a nightmare of urban warfare where the very buildings fought back, or tried to. Zelithian crystal architecture was semi-sentient, capable of reshaping itself defensively, but harvester weapons had been specifically designed to corrupt biocrystalline structures. Every hit turned allies into enemies as twisted spires became falling hazards and protective walls became shrapnel fountains. Elena moved through the crystalline labyrinth with her medical kit, searching for survivors from either species, while trying not to think about how the dying city sounded like it was weeping. The Zelithians had initially been insulted when humans compared their architecture to living organisms, but 3 days of fighting had made the similarities horrifyingly obvious. Through a gap in the crystal formations, she caught sight of Princess Zaralyn Kethvar coordinating a defensive position with her crystal guard. The princess's bioluminescent tattoos were cycling through rapid tactical patterns, blue geometries for movement commands, gold spirals for targeting data, silver lines connecting squad positions in real-time battlefield coordination. Elena had never seen Zelithian command protocols up close. The light show was beautiful and terrifying simultaneously. Fascinating, isn't it? Elena spun to find Captain Torres crouched behind the same crystal formation, his armor scarred from close encounters with harvester energy weapons. "The tattoos," Elena asked, "I thought they were decorative." "Decorative like our neural implants are decorative. Those patterns are direct neural interfaces with their tactical networks. Princess Zaralyn is literally thinking her commands into her troops' heads." Elena watched the princess's tattoos shift to urgent red patterns as harvester scouts appeared on the crystalline horizon. The response was immediate, crystal guard warriors moving with perfect coordination, their own tattoos echoing the princess's commands in synchronized light displays. "How do we even begin to coordinate with that?" Elena asked. "Very carefully," Torres replied, "and probably not at all if we keep losing ground this fast." The sound of approaching harvester war machines made Elena's teeth ache, a subsonic rumbling that the crystal city amplified and reflected, until it felt like standing inside a massive organ pipe. Through her scope, she could see the enemy units moving like mechanical spiders through the crystal maze, their adaptive armor already learning to counter Zelithian defensive strategies. Princess Zaralyn's voice cut through the chaos, her words carrying harmonics that made human translation equipment struggle. Elena's universal translator managed. "Fall back to secondary crystal formations. Maintain light discipline during movement." "Light discipline?" Elena asked Torres. "Their tattoos give away positions. Combat doctrine requires emotional control to prevent involuntary bioluminescence." Torres checked his weapon charge. "Try staying calm while being shot at by machines that want to harvest your neural tissue for spare parts." Elena watched the crystal guard execute their withdrawal with precision that made human military movements look clumsy by comparison. But she could see the strain in Princess Zaralyn's posture, the way her tattoos flickered between command patterns and something else, grief, maybe, or exhaustion. A wounded Zelithian warrior stumbled past their position, his left arm hanging useless and his tattoos pulsing weakly with distress patterns. Elena moved to help automatically, then stopped as 2 Crystal Guard medics intercepted her with polite but firm gestures. "No touch," one of them said in heavily accented standard. "Honor forbids." Elena watched them tend to their wounded comrade, with techniques that involved placing hands on his tattoos, channeling bioenergy through light patterns that seemed to accelerate healing at the cellular level. It was beautiful, efficient, and completely alien. "They won't let us treat their wounded," she observed to Tors, "and we can't use their healing methods on our people. Makes for interesting casualty management." Another artillery barrage shook the Crystal City, this time close enough to shower them with fragments of what had once been someone's home. Through the falling debris, Alina saw Princess Zaralin's tattoos flare brilliant white, pure command authority overriding everything else. "All forces, immediate withdrawal to the catacombs," her translated voice announced. "The surface position is no longer tenable." Alina gathered her medical kit and followed the retreat, noting how the princess remained at her position until every other warrior had moved to safety. Leadership from the front was apparently universal, even if the communication methods involved living light shows. "Commander Vasquez," Princess Zaralin's voice carried across the crystal formations as Alina passed the command position. "Your medical expertise has been noted." Alina paused, surprised by the direct acknowledgement. Through her translator, Zalithian formal speech sounded like poetry mixed with tactical briefings. "Thank you, Your Highness." The princess's tattoos shifted to patterns Alina didn't recognize, something softer than command authority, more complex than simple acknowledgement. "The wounded do not discriminate between species when they suffer." "No, they don't." "Perhaps," Princess Zaralin said, her tattoos cycling through contemplative patterns, "honor must sometimes bend to necessity." Before Alina could respond, Harvester units breached the outer crystal perimeter, their energy weapons turning ancient architecture into molten glass. Princess Zaralin's tattoos snapped back to brilliant tactical patterns as she coordinated the final defensive actions. Alina ran for the catacomb entrances with everyone else, but she found herself looking back at the princess, who stood silhouetted against the dying light of a 3,000-year-old city, her bioluminescent tattoos the only bright thing left in an increasingly dark world. The crystal catacombs beneath Velendra had never been designed for military operations, but 3 days of desperate fighting had turned ancient meditation chambers into field hospitals and sacred reflection pools into ammunition storage. Alina moved through the bioluminescent corridors, her medical scanner painting wounded soldiers in clinical blue light, while the catacomb walls provided their own ethereal illumination. "Human medical officer approaching," announced Lieutenant Craven, one of the Crystal Guard medics whose tattoos currently displayed the cautious yellow patterns Alina had learned meant procedural uncertainty. The Zalithian wounded were arranged in precise geometric formations that apparently had spiritual significance beyond Alina's understanding. Their tattoos created a complex light display, injury patterns in red, healing protocols in green, emotional states, cycling through the entire visible spectrum. It was like working in a nightclub designed by combat surgeons. "I can help," Alina offered, approaching a Crystal Guard warrior whose left leg was obviously broken. "Honor protocols forbid non-Zalithian medical contact," Lieutenant Craven replied, though his tattoos suggested he found the restriction as frustrating as Alina did. "Honor protocols are going to get people killed. Death with honor is preferable to life with shame." Alina watched the Zalithian medics work, their healing techniques requiring direct skin contact to transfer bioenergy through their tattoo networks. It was elegant and effective, but they were outnumbered 20-1 by casualties. Meanwhile, human medics treated their own wounded using techniques that looked barbarically mechanical by comparison. "This is insane," Alina muttered, watching a Zalithian warrior's condition deteriorate while his medic was busy with someone else. "Cultural integration," observed Corporal Martinez, Alina's medic assistant, "is apparently more complicated than they covered in orientation." The catacombs shook as another harvester bombardment hit the surface, sending crystalline dust drifting through the air like glowing snow. Alina's scanner detected 17 human casualties, requiring immediate attention, and at least 30 Zelithians whose bioluminescent distress patterns suggested critical injuries. Princess Zaralyn appeared in the medical area, her command tattoos now overlaid with healing patterns as she personally tended to wounded Crystal Guard members. Alina watched her work, hands moving with practiced precision, tattoos channeling bioenergy that actually accelerated cellular regeneration. "Your Highness," Alina said, approaching carefully, "could you teach us those healing techniques?" The princess paused, her tattoos cycling through what Alina was learning to recognize as internal conflict. Zelithian bioenergy transfer requires symbiotic tattoo organisms. Humans lack the necessary biological infrastructure. What about the reverse? Could Zelithian medics learn human techniques? Your methods appear to cause intentional trauma to promote healing. This conflicts with our fundamental understanding of medical practice. Alina gestured to a human medic, suturing a plasma burn. Sometimes you have to hurt someone to help them. A philosophy that explains much about human military doctrine. Despite the criticism, Alina caught humor in the princess's tattoo patterns, subtle shifts in color that suggested amusement rather than judgment. "Could you at least let us try? The wounded don't care about protocol compatibility." Princess Zaralyn considered this, her tattoos displaying complex decision-making patterns. "Observe," she said finally, "but do not interfere." Alina watched as the princess treated a Crystal Guard warrior with severe internal injuries. The healing process involved placing hands on specific tattoo locations, channeling bioenergy that somehow convinced damaged organs to repair themselves. But the effort was enormous. Alina could see the princess's own tattoos dimming as she transferred her life force to save her warrior. "You're exhausting yourself," Alina observed. "Leadership requires sacrifice." Leadership requires leaders staying alive long enough to lead. The princess's tattoos flashed irritation patterns, then shifted to something that might have been consideration. Human military doctrine emphasizes commander preservation. Human military doctrine emphasizes winning wars, which requires keeping experienced officers functional. An interesting perspective. The medical work continued with Alina, and the princess developing an odd parallel routine, treating their respective species wounded while maintaining technical conversations about medical philosophy. Alina noticed that Princess Zaralyn was taking on increasingly difficult cases personally, pushing her bioenergy reserves beyond safe limits. "You're going to collapse," Alina warned as the princess began treating her fifth critical case in 2 hours. "Collapse is irrelevant if my warriors survive. Collapse is extremely relevant if it leaves your warriors without medical support." Princess Zaralyn paused, her tattoos cycling through patterns Alina couldn't interpret. Human commanders do not personally tend their wounded. Human commanders delegate medical work to specialists so they can focus on command decisions. And if the specialists are overwhelmed, then we train more specialists, or we adapt our techniques, or we find ways to work more efficiently. We don't let commanders die of exhaustion in field hospitals. The princess's tattoos shifted to what Alina was learning meant deep thought. Your people are remarkably practical about survival. Survival is practical. Honor is a luxury you can afford after you've won. Honor defines why victory is worth achieving. Alina gestured around the catacomb medical area, where both species struggled to treat casualties with inadequate resources. Right now, victory means keeping as many people alive as possible. Everything else is theoretical. A new wave of casualties arrived from the surface, both human and Zelithian mixed together, carried by whoever had been available to help. Alina noticed that several humans had been treated with Zelithian first aid techniques, while some Zelithians showed evidence of human emergency medical intervention. "The soldiers are ignoring protocols," Princess Zaralyn observed, her tattoos displaying what might have been approval. Combat has a way of clarifying priorities, Alina agreed. The princess studied the mixed casualties, her tattoos cycling through decision-making patterns. Finally, she approached Alina directly. Could you teach me your trauma stabilization techniques? Alina blinked, surprised. Your people forbidden from learning human medicine. My people are forbidden from many things that might prove necessary for survival. And you're willing to break those prohibitions. Princess Zaralin's tattoos shifted to patterns Alina had never seen. Complex spirals that seemed to indicate resolution mixed with acceptance of consequences. I am willing to prioritize the lives of my warriors over the comfort of tradition. The catacomb collapse came without warning, a series of harvester kinetic strikes that turned 3,000 years of Zelithian architecture into a crystalline avalanche. Alina found herself thrown against a bioluminescent wall as the entire underground complex shuddered, emergency lighting flickering between human strobes and alien biopatterns that painted the chaos in surreal colors. Sound off, she called into her comm, receiving scattered responses from separated units throughout the damaged catacomb network. The main medical area had been cut off from the command center, leaving Alina with 17 wounded humans, 23 injured Zelithians, and no way to coordinate with the surface forces. Through gaps in the collapsed ceiling, she could hear the distinctive whine of harvester energy weapons getting closer. Princess Zaralin's tactical channel is down, reported Corporal Martinez, working frantically with their long-range communications equipment. I'm getting fragmented signals from Crystal Guard units, but the translation software can't handle combat-damaged bioluminescent transmissions. Alina moved through the rubble-strewn medical area, checking casualties and trying to assess their tactical situation. The wounded were in bad shape, both species showing the effects of extended combat stress and limited medical supplies. Worse, several Zelithians were displaying tattoo patterns she'd never seen before, rapid flickers that suggested systemic bioenergy failure. Their healing symbionts are failing, she realized, watching one Crystal Guard warrior's tattoos dim to barely perceptible levels. The stress and injuries are overloading their biological systems. Through a gap in the collapsed crystal formations, Alina heard the unmistakable sound of sustained energy weapons fire. Someone was holding a defensive position alone, and the tactical pattern suggested they were vastly outnumbered. That's Crystal Guard weaponry, observed Sergeant Chen, Alina's senior medic. Single shooter, probably isolated like us. Alina grabbed her personal weapon and medical kit. Maintain triage protocols. I'm going to investigate. She crawled through the crystal debris, following the sound of combat through passages that had been turned into abstract art by high-explosive impacts. The bioluminescent walls provided enough light to navigate, but their peaceful glow contrasted sharply with the violence echoing through the catacombs. The tactical situation became clear as Alina reached a main junction. Princess Zaralin had established a chokepoint defense at the intersection of 3 corridors, holding off multiple harvester units while protecting a group of civilian refugees trapped behind her position. The princess was alone, separated from her bodyguard, fighting with precision that was beautiful and desperate simultaneously. Alina's medical scanner painted the scene in clinical detail. Princess Zaralin had sustained severe injuries, a deep plasma burn across her torso, multiple lacerations from crystal shrapnel, and bioenergy readings that suggested her tattoo symbionts were in critical failure. She was dying by degrees while maintaining perfect tactical discipline. She's bleeding out, Alina whispered, watching the princess's movements slow as her bioluminescent tattoos grew dimmer with each passing minute. The tactical display was nightmare clear. More harvester units approaching from all 3 corridors, limited ammunition, and a commander whose injury patterns suggested she had minutes rather than hours left. The princess was trapped between her duty to protect civilians and her body's increasing inability to function. Alina studied the situation with the sound of approaching harvester units made the decision urgent. Princess Zarelin's defensive fire was weakening as her condition deteriorated. In minutes, the position would be overrun, the civilians would be captured for neural harvesting, and both the princess and Alina would be dead. Options, Alina muttered, running through medical protocols in her head. Standard human trauma surgery might kill the symbionts. Zilithian bioenergy healing is failing due to weapon effects. Combined approach could work, but requires direct bioenergy contact during treatment. The problem was clear. Saving Princess Zarelin's life would require Alina to violate every Zilithian taboo about touching royalty, potentially trigger a diplomatic incident, and risk her own life if the damaged symbionts rejected human bioenergy. Through the gap in the crystal formations, Alina watched the princess reload her weapon with movements that were growing increasingly unsteady. Her tattoos flickered with what Alina now recognized as determination overriding system failures. She was going to fight until she died, protecting civilians she'd never met because her honor code demanded nothing less. Tactical assessment, Alina said to herself, falling back on military training to cut through the impossible cultural and medical complexities. Mission, preserve life. Obstacles, cultural taboos, medical unknowns, enemy contact. Resources, standard human medical equipment, 10 years of trauma surgery experience, and pure stubborn refusal to watch someone die when you might be able to save them. Alina checked her weapon, her medical kit, and her personal courage. All three were functional, if not optimal. Time to break some rules, she decided, and began moving toward the princess's position. The first harvester unit rounded the corner just as Alina reached the choke point, its mechanical sensors immediately identifying her as a target. Princess Zarelin's response was automatic, tactical fire that neutralized the threat while her tattoos displayed surprise at Alina's appearance. "Commander Vasquez," the princess said, her voice strained but professional, "this position is not tactically sound for medical personnel." "Good thing I'm not just medical personnel," Alina replied, taking cover beside the princess and assessing her injuries up close. "You're bleeding to death. Irrelevant while civilians require protection. Extremely relevant if you want to keep protecting them." Princess Zarelin's tattoos flickered through patterns Alina couldn't read, but her meaning was clear in any language. Duty superseded personal survival. Another harvester unit appeared, this one moving with the adaptive intelligence that made them so dangerous. Alina and the princess engaged it simultaneously, their combined fire barely managing to disable its combat systems before it could return effective fire. "More contacts approaching," Alina observed, watching her scanner display multiply threat indicators. "We need to move the civilians. Movement exposes them to harvester interdiction fields. Staying here exposes them to being overrun and captured." Princess Zarelin's tattoos cycled through rapid decision patterns, but Alina could see the bioenergy fluctuations growing more erratic. The princess was running on determination and combat stimulants, her biological systems failing faster than her tactical mind could compensate. "Your Highness," Alina said, making a command decision, "I'm going to save your life now. This is going to involve breaking several laws and possibly starting a diplomatic crisis." The princess looked at her with eyes that held pain, confusion, and something that might have been gratitude. "Do what you must," she said simply. Alina abandoned cover and dropped to her knees beside Princess Zarelin just as the next wave of harvester units rounded the corridor junction. Without hesitation, she pressed her bare hands directly against the princess's plasma burn, ignoring every protocol she'd ever learned about Zilithian cultural taboos, and the very real possibility that contact with failing tattoo symbionts might kill them both. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Princess Zarelin's eyes went wide, not with pain, but with shock at Alina's fearless devotion. Her tattoos exploded into colors Alina had never seen before, brilliant patterns that seemed to contain their own light source as human bioenergy interfaced with Zilithian healing systems in ways that defied both species' understanding of biology. "What are you doing?" the princess whispered, her voice carrying harmonics of awe and terror. "Saving your life," Alina replied, feeling her own life force being drawn into the princess's failing systems. "Try not to die while I figure out how." Alina's hands burned as the damaged symbionts tried to process human bioenergy, creating feedback loops that sent pain shooting up her arms. But underneath the agony, she could feel something working. Her human cellular regeneration techniques somehow complementing Zilithian bioenergy healing, creating a hybrid approach that neither species had ever attempted. "The symbionts are accepting your biosignature," Princess Zaralyn said, her tattoos brightening as Alina's intervention stabilized the cascade failures. "This should not be possible." "Lots of things shouldn't be possible," Alina replied, maintaining pressure on the wound while monitoring the princess's vital signs. "Turns out biology is more flexible than bureaucracy." Harvester units pressed their attack, energy weapons turning the crystal junction into a deadly light show. Alina found herself fighting one-handed while maintaining medical contact, her weapon fire guided by combat reflexes, while her medical training focused on keeping the princess alive. "You're going to get killed trying to treat me under fire," Princess Zaralyn observed, her own weapon tracking targets with renewed precision as Alina's intervention restored her strength. "I'm going to get killed if I don't treat you under fire. At least this way we both have a chance." The bioenergy connection deepened as Alina's medical procedures interfaced with the princess's healing systems. Suddenly she could sense the princess's pain, her determination, her amazement at Alina's willingness to risk everything for someone she'd known for less than a week. Through the connection, Princess Zaralyn experienced Alina's perspective, the clinical assessment that had led to breaking every rule, the military training that made saving lives more important than following protocols, and the simple human stubbornness that refused to let people die when something could be done about it. "You fear nothing," the princess said, her tattoos displaying patterns that Alina somehow understood meant profound respect. "I fear plenty," Alina replied, continuing her medical work while returning enemy fire. "I just don't let fear make medical decisions." The treatment was working. Princess Zaralyn's tattoos stabilized into healthy patterns as Alina's intervention convinced the damaged symbionts to resume normal function. But the bioenergy connection was creating unexpected effects. Alina found her own healing abilities enhanced, her combat reflexes sharpened by Zilithian bioenergy feedback. "We're bonded," Princess Zaralyn realized, her tattoos showing wonder mixed with concern. The medical interface has created permanent bioenergy synchronization. "Is that bad?" "It is unprecedented. Human and Zilithian bioenergy systems are incompatible according to every scientific model. Scientific models don't account for battlefield medicine performed by people who are too stubborn to accept incompatibility." Harvester reinforcements arrived, but Alina and Princess Zaralyn met them with coordinated fire that seemed almost telepathic in its precision. Their bioenergy bond allowed them to anticipate each other's movements, sharing tactical awareness through direct neural connection. "The civilians," Princess Zaralyn said, her injuries now stable enough to allow movement. "Evacuation route through collapse section 7, Alina replied, the tactical information flowing through their connection faster than speech. They moved through the catacombs like a two-person army, Alina's medical knowledge complemented by the princess's tactical expertise. The bioenergy bond made them more effective together than either could have been alone, their combined abilities creating capabilities that surprised even them. The civilian evacuation proceeded smoothly, with Alina treating wounded refugees, while Princess Zaralyn coordinated their movement through Crystal Guard communications networks. Other soldiers from both species watched their interaction with fascination and growing acceptance, Protocol violations that saved lives were hard to argue with. Command is requesting explanation for unauthorized medical procedures on Zilithian royalty, reported Corporal Martinez when they finally reached the rally point. Command can request all they want, Elena replied. Medical decisions are made by medical officers. Princess Zaralin's tattoos displayed amusement. Zilithian High Command is similarly interested in explanations for royal bioenergy bonding with human personnel. What do we tell them? That emergency medical intervention created an unprecedented interspecies connection that has enhanced our combat effectiveness and may revolutionize cooperation between our peoples. Elena looked at the princess, reading her emotions through their bioenergy bond. Beneath the formal language was genuine gratitude, growing affection, and excitement about possibilities neither had considered before their lives became connected. That sounds very diplomatic, Elena observed. Diplomacy is important when explaining why you've accidentally created the first recorded human-Zilithian bioenergy partnership. Accidentally. Princess Zaralin's tattoos shifted to patterns Elena now understood meant happiness mixed with determination. Perhaps not entirely accidentally. 6 months later, Elena stood in the joint medical research facility that had been built around their partnership, watching Princess Zaralin, now simply Zaralin, as their bioenergy bond had eliminated most formal protocols, train the first integrated human Zilithian medical teams. Their bonding had indeed revolutionized cooperation between species, creating healing techniques that combined human resilience with Zilithian bioenergy manipulation. Any regrets about breaking every rule in both species' books? Zaralin asked through their private bioenergy connection. Only that it took a collapsing catacomb and enemy fire to make it happen, Elena replied. Though I have to admit, the look in your eyes when I first touched your wound, that was worth a few diplomatic incidents. Fearless devotion, Zaralin said, her tattoos glowing with contentment. I had never experienced someone willing to risk everything for my life simply because it was the right thing to do. And I'd never experienced someone worth risking everything for, Elena replied. Through their bioenergy bond, they shared the quiet satisfaction of work that mattered, a partnership that had grown from desperate necessity into something neither could have imagined alone, and the knowledge that sometimes the most important rules are the ones that need to be broken. The new medical protocols are working beyond all projections, Zaralin observed, watching their students practice the hybrid healing techniques